Hello, Kako. Welcome back to another Mo'olelo Monday. The reason why I didn't film anything last Monday was because I had a pretty tiring week's end a couple of weeks ago. Um, I chaperoned our sixth grade to visit the Camp Erdman site. Yeah, they went camping, and so I was invited to come along as a chaperone for one of the boys' cabins. And um, personally, I enjoy that kind of experience with the students. Again, like I said last video, the passions that I have, what makes me happy is seeing other people happy, seeing other people at play, seeing other people enjoying themselves. So it it's always nice to go on these excursions with the kids, especially when they get to be themselves. And so I cherish those moments where I get to watch them interact with each other in a non-academic way. It You get to see another side of a lot of different students. You get to see the ones that are usually pretty quiet, opening up. You get to see the ones that usually don't really shine the brightest. So I love that kind of thing. And every year I'm invited, I always see it as a blessing to have to go with them on these excursions to the camp. Yeah, so it was a quick 3 days, and always this one particular thing the kids enjoy doing, and it's called Gaga Ball. Okay, um, I'd never even heard of this game Gaga Ball until my first time chaperoning at Camp Erdman with the sixth graders, and the first time I saw it, I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was very interesting, um, and every year I'm just astounded at how that Gaga pit just continually calls to these students. Like that's what they want to do, morning, noon, and night. They just want to play Gaga Ball, and so I don't know. My skin is somewhat clearing up. I got some pretty bad sunburn. My nose is all sunburned, but I seem to have bounced back pretty quick from that. My head's all fuzzy and peeling and whatnot. So I got a lot of pictures of my trip with the kids on my phone. Maybe I'll throw some up on top as I'm talking about the um, doing our Mo'olelo Monday. But since we just went to Camp Erdman, I thought we'd kind of dedicate this one to stories, because last Mo'olelo Monday, unfortunately, I didn't get to tell very many stories. So yeah, so I'd like to share some stories. First of all, with my personal experience with as a kid growing up and going to Camp Erdman as a sixth grader, and then of course now going as an adult with a group of sixth graders that are different every single year. But yeah, so when I went to Camp Erdman, I must have been about 10 or 11 years old. 10 years old. And I don't know. I remember it being a lot of fun. I don't remember us doing as many things as the kids today do. I mean, but it was fun, and it wasn't because of all the stuff that we would do at the camp. I think for me, it was more fun because I got to hang out with my friends, off school campus, not worried about school, and staying up all night in the cabin, talking story, telling campfire stories and ghost stories and stuff like that. Seeing the teachers after the sun goes down. That's a real eye opener, especially since some of us believe that a teacher or two at our school were going to monster. They would turn into some kind of monster at night, which they didn't. So it was really nice. But I hadn't really heard any stories per se about the camp. I didn't really hear any ghost stories or anything like that. But when we got to camp and we're hanging out as a group, and of course the end of the first day, and we're getting ready to go, well, lights out, right? We don't really go to bed. We just lights out, and we just stay up all night talking. Just like random campfire stories. The guy with the hook that slashes the boyfriend inside the Morgan's corner, and all these other stories would play out. But the one I remember, or what happened what I remember from being at camp, is the first night nothing really happened. The second night we stayed at the camp, I could swear that some like these knocking sounds. I could hear this like these knocking noises, and I woke up. It was dark, and I'm trying to get comfortable to go back to sleep. But what happens is, because it's the middle of the night, I have to go use the bathroom. And so, fortunately, inside the cabins, they had a toilet, they had a sink, and I had a shower. But I made my way over to the toilet, washed up, and then when I came back out, turned off the light, came back out, my eyes were adjusting to the darkness. I remember seeing a shadow standing by one of the windows. And so I went to go investigate to see what was going on, and I realized it was one of my friends standing there in front of this tall rectangular hole portal. And I walked over and says, "Hey, everything okay? You okay? What are you looking at?" Because this kid was just staring straight out of this window. And so he mentions, "There's something out there." I said, "Yeah? What is it?" He says, "I don't know what it is. It's like a man, but it's moving really fast." So he tells me this person is like darting back and forth, like I guess like the Flash or Sonic the Hedgehog, whatever you want to say. Some kind of speedster guy is just moving between the buildings really quick. And so I'm like, really? So I'm looking out the window, I'm trying to adjust my eyes to the light that's outside, and I don't see anything. But he swears upon it that he saw a shadow zigzagging and running really fast between the cabins. So anyway, I make my way back over to the bed, and I lay down. And so I'm close my eyes trying to get sleep, and that's what I hear. I hear the knocking. So I'm like, okay. In my head I'm thinking, okay, well, it could be my cabin mate knocking on the window, trying to like freak me out. But I'm like, why would he do that? Why would he do that? And besides that, it sounded like it was on the front door. And so we weren't allowed to leave the cabins after dark. Doesn't matter what. We have to wait for the adult, to wake up or whatever, and then we all go together. But we were not allowed to open the door until the morning. And so, because I heard the knocks, and I kind of believed it to be whatever it was trying to get inside from outside, I turned to my side and I covered myself up with my blanket and I forced myself to go to sleep. Anyway, the next morning, I remember the girls' cabin were all like, hey, making all this big noise and stuff like that. And, well, come to find out that the girls' cabin also heard knocking, and I kept them up for quite a while. Something was knocking on their door. And so I guess to me it was like, okay, so there's something going on here at this camp. I don't know what it is, but this shadowy figure is running all around. And at the time I had no idea. I had no idea that the camp was haunted. And when I'd come home, I forget who I talked to, if it was my brother or my sister or what. Well, my brother and my sister's older than me. I said, "Oh yeah, this is what happened at the camp," and we the girls heard knocking, I heard knocking, and then my friend saw this shadowy man running around, and then they nonchalantly just replied, "Oh yeah, because Camp Erdman is haunted." And I was like, kind of would have been good information to know before I went, right? I mean, like everyone was talking about how Camp Erdman was creepy, and it could be creepy and it could be haunted. And no one really had a definitive story. And so because they said that, and because of what I experienced and because of what I saw, I personally didn't see anything paranormal when I was at the camp. But from what everyone else had said, like the girls coming out, my friend standing by the window looking out there, and me hearing supposed knocking coming from outside, I put it all together and I was like, wow. So that was an experience, It was kind of like a weird experience, though, because it's like one of those that's just like not 100% sure if it truly was. Can't really go back in time and investigate it because, it's too late, right? But technically, me going back as an adult provided some validation for what I experienced when I was younger and what my friend experienced. So if he's watching this, I hope that he knows that he wasn't nuts, in case he was thinking he is, because that place really had something going on. So I want to say Yeah, 5 years ago, I went to chaperone the Camp Erdman for the first time. It was a situation at the pool, hearing about the diving board at the pool. People would dive off the board and plop into the pool. They would feel this icy grip grabbing them by the ankle as they tried to swim to the surface, forcing them to go back under the surface of the water, keeping them from coming up. And then, of course, they'd break up and they're like, hey, what the heck is grabbing me and all that stuff. So there were those stories. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So we went to hike up into the mountains. And, of course, the mountains over there were the same mountains that our Huaka'ipo, our night marchers, travel all the way to Kaena Point, where the Lele is. The Lena, where the spirits leave. They jump from this plane to the next. So I told them the story, and then the kids told me the next morning, on the last day, they said they heard somebody knock on top of the door while we were sleeping. They woke up to the sound of 3 knocks on the door, and because I told them they weren't allowed to open the door until morning, they didn't open it. But one of the kids said they looked out the door and they saw that there was nobody standing in front of the because they had that window right next to the door. Yeah, they looked out the window and they didn't see anybody standing by the door. That's right. So getting to the second time I chaperoned for Camp Erdman, this was the really weird one because I checked, because I was doing research for my book. I actually checked the moon calendar and found out that particular weekend it was Pokane. I didn't know that until the day of Pokane. But here's what's weird. So we were doing our groups are doing our activities, and one of the activities was wilderness survival training. And so one of the things that we had to do in our group actually had to start a fire. And so they were teaching about the kids about like kindling and fuel and all this other stuff. And so they needed to collect all their supplies from around the campsite. And so we were looking around for all these materials, and it brought us to this covered area, this kind of shaded area towards the shore, the beach shore, where these trees and these vine plants and stuff were just created this natural shack or hut-like area. And so while we were collecting twigs and stuff from over there, I remember getting this intense feeling like something was watching us, like something was hiding in the shadows, because it was pretty dark underneath that bushy area. And even though it was midday, it was pretty dark. And so I remember telling the kids, hey, grab your stuff, let's go, let's get out of here. And the kids were like, no, don't rush us, we got to collect all these stuff and we're not gonna have enough. And I said, no, let's go someplace else and collect then, because I don't like it over here. It didn't feel natural. What it felt like to me was, it felt like we were intruding. Yeah, something was there watching us because we were intruding. Kind of almost like how it feels when you go to a cemetery, you know, that same kind of energy. So I was like, wow, I wonder if this place is like a burial. I mean, like, chances are pretty high, since it's next to the ocean, chances are pretty high because it's pretty secluded area, right? And if there was a fishing village nearby, where else are they going to bury the bodies but in the sand or whatever, right? So I had the kids move away from there, and that feeling subsided. It had gone away. But then when we went to the marine biology, we did the touch tank and all that. As soon as we were done in that office, looking at the animals, we moved back to the beach area on the opposite side of the camp, more towards the west of the camp. And the gal that was running the marine biology part, she had us do a beach cleanup, picking up microplastics and all that stuff, right? Sifting the sand from plastic. And excuse me. And so what happened was, she's sitting there getting in the setting sunlight, resting on top of one of those lounge chairs. I just kind of made my way over to her, not to offend her or anything like that. I didn't want to take her away from her rest time, but I asked her, says, hey, anything weird happen around here for you, you know? And so she looks at me, shakes off her sunglasses. You mean like ghosts? And I said, yeah, weird stuff like that. And she says, well, and she goes on about this story about when she stayed inside the cabins. And she said, yeah, one night my friend and I were in a cabin. I can't remember if she was like just staying because, you know, it was empty and they decided just to stay in the cabin, but I can't remember what the reasoning was, if they're testing it out or something. But she said that her friend was staring out the window, and this reminds me totally of my story from when I was a kid, right? So this is where I'm being validated. And she says her friend was staring out the window, and when she went over to go check on her to see if everything was okay, her friend tells her, look, there's someone out there. And so this gal looks out the door, or out the window, the portal, and as she's looking out there trying to see this person, she's like, I don't see anybody. And so she says, look up on the roof. He's squatting on top of the roof. So she looks up towards the top of the building, and the building's an A-frame, right? So it's got that the peak on the top of it there, like triangle. And she looks up there and she sees this shadow of a guy, some person, okay? It's a shadow, just all black. And it was crouched over like a gargoyle crouches on the edge of a building. And she said she saw that shadow looking down towards the cabins, and it freaked her out, like totally uncomfortable, right? And so I was, wow, you know, I mean, I didn't share my story with her, but she shared that with me, and it made me feel good because, you know, it gave me that peace in knowing that, oh my goodness, my friend wasn't crazy. First of all, if my buddy's watching the show, you're not crazy. And the knocking that I heard was not crazy, because apparently other people had heard it the next day, and this other girl that had stayed in her cabin as an adult had seen this shadow guy crouching on the very top of the cabin from across the way. She could see it, and I could just imagine this thing was just hanging out, waiting for everybody to go sleep, waiting for all the lights to go out before finally creeping down from the very top of the building and zoop, 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 running between all the buildings, trying to find out who's trying to go to sleep, who's getting ready for bed, and as soon as they're comfortable, just hear the knocking on the door. So, interesting. Very, very interesting. So she told me that story, and I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. So, luckily, I was able to give a little bit more information to the children that were there that year, and I felt happy because I was like, you know, I mean, you kind of want to hear the stories, right? You want to hear the stories about the bloody hand on the door. You want to hear the stories about the shadow that's running around and knocking on doors. You want to hear the story about, you know, the hand grabbing for you, or somebody grabbing for you under the water when you dive off the diving board. You want to hear all these creepy things because it makes you excited, right? It gives you all that adrenaline when you're trying to go to sleep at the cabin. And it's just an appropriate place to do it too, right? At camp. It's like no other better place to tell a spooky story than like around a campfire or just with a group of friends sleeping together for the first time in a cabin with a stranger snoring in the corner, right? The adult. So that was the first night. That was the first day. The next day, which was actually Pokane. This part was interesting. I had a pretty rough day. I mean, like, we were going everywhere, you know, and it was so hot, and it was so. Anyway, I was dealing with stuff myself, right, because of the heat and stuff like that. You know, my own body and the way it adjusts to heat. But anyway, what happens is I tell the stories. I tell the stories that night, the second night, before we're gonna go home, because everybody's more comfortable, right? You tell the stories the second night, they feel more at ease. Yeah, they're not afraid to call their parents and say, "Mom, can you pick me up?" So the second night, I tell the stories about the camp to the kids. I tell them about my little street stories. And what happens is I tell them, and, you know, I told them an extra story about when we went to Kaena and the rain started coming out of nowhere. I told that story to them, and they were like tripping out. They're like, "Oh, that's cool." And they're like, "Oh, where is that at?" I said, "It's right down the street from here." It's like, just go another couple miles up and you end up at Kaena Point, and that's where we were. And so they were like, "Wow, that's cool." And so I says, "Yeah, just keep your eyes and ears open. You never know. You might actually experience, because it's Pokane, you might actually experience the night marchers." And so I had actually gone to sleep early that time. I went to sleep at maybe 10:45, 11. and the rest of the kids were up after me. I knew they were up because I could still hear them talking when I crashed out. The next morning I wake up, and the boys are already up. I look at them, and they're kind of like, they look kind of tired. They look kind of like defeated. They don't look very happy, and I was kind of tripping out. I was like, wow, we're just having a great time. And maybe they were sad because we were leaving, that day. But I asked them, I said, hey, you guys okay or what? Yeah, we didn't get to stay up much longer after you went to bed because we heard drumming coming from the mountain. And I was like, what? Yeah, we heard the drums. We're the drums, they tell me. We're the drums, Mr. D. So I was like, you heard the drums? So I'm like skeptical. I'm like, yeah, because I told you guys a story, and now you guys know what to expect. You guys are going to make it up, right? So I grabbed one of the boys that were pretty trustworthy. Well, I mean, they were all trustworthy, but this kid was, an exceptionally good kid. I says, and he wouldn't lie. So I was like, did you hear it? And he says, yeah, I heard it. So I said, can you do me a favor? Can you knock on this bedpost over here and repeat what you heard? So he knocked on it. He heard. It's just a steady rhythmic cadence as the drums would be, yeah. And I was like, whoa, okay. So that's basically how I heard it when I heard them up at New Wano. I heard the drum beat just like that, boom, 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 right? And I was like, oh, dang, okay. And I looked at him and says, why didn't you guys wake me up? And he said, we're too scared. So all of us just laid down and we turned off our flashlights and went to sleep. So I said, oh, good move. So that was very cool. I mean, we came out of the cabin after we cleaned up, packed up all our stuff, and moved it all out to the front of our cabins. And again, the girls came filing out of their cabins, and they started saying the same thing. Oh, Mr. D, we heard drumming last night coming from the mountains. And I'm like, dang, man, everybody heard it but me. I missed out. So it was a cool event for them. It wasn't meant for me, but I thought it was really cool for them to experience. That they had these stories from a person who brought them, these stories to them while they're staying at camp, and they were able to experience the spiritual in the area on their own, and they didn't have any adults to mess anything up when they were going through their own personal experience. So that was really cool. It was really nice. Anyway, fast forward to last week. Man, it was crazy. So we get to the camp, and I've got a whole bunch of stories ready to tell them because every single time it seems to grow, right? The stories keep growing and experiences keep growing. So I'm there looking for a good old time. We go over to the survival training. I tell them a story while we're there. I tell them a story about how this area feels like it's a burial and da-da-da, and kids are like, oh, I don't really feel spooked out over here, Mr. D. So I was like, oh yeah. And I was kind of sitting there too, and I was thinking to myself, I don't feel kind of spooked out either. Actually, it feels pretty nice over here right now. Weird. So we moved on to the next place, and the entire day was fantastic. I mean, like, kids had fun doing what they were doing, and we ate our dinner, and it was time for us to make it back to the cabins to take showers and whatnot. So all the kids were excited to be with each other at night. They're all running around, having a good time. And so they wanted to hear scary stories. So, of course, I didn't say any scary stories about the camp. Instead, I was just telling them random stories. And so what was cool was they all had a good time with the stories. And we all went off to our cabins, went to sleep, and there was nothing. I mean, everything was calm. I mean, when we first got there, one of the parents, the chaperone parents, said when they went inside their cabin, it felt a little strange. It felt like something was kind of watching them. And then later, because we went to go check the cabins, adults went to go check the cabins as the counselors had the children. So when we went to grab the children to bring their bags and stuff back to the cabins to unload everything, unpack, one of the girls had mentioned that the same cabin with the parent as the chaperone, saying that, oh, they're this feeling of something watching them. And so that's interesting because it's the same thing. And I didn't want to say anything else, to keep it down. I didn't share with her how the chaperone felt, and I didn't tell the chaperone how she felt because I didn't want things to, be silly. But later on that night, we're getting ready for bed, and all of a sudden I just hear screaming. All these girls are just screaming their heads off, and boom, hear knocking on our cabin door. So of course, I gotta throw my clothes on and then head over to the door and find out what the heck's going on. And when I open the door up, the girls are all screaming about, something in their cabin. So I walk over to their cabin, and they're all like panicking. They're all holding each other, and even the chaperone was kind of like, I don't know what's going on. I just came out of the shower, and these kids were going nuts. And so I asked the kids, I said, what happened? So they're all like, oh, the lights are turning on and off all on their own. We're freaking out. And so I was like, really? So I'm looking at the light switch, and the light switch kind of looks pretty new. Like, it looks like one of those that you can put a timer on. Looks like one you could use a remote for. It's got, the fan settings and all kinds of stuff. I was like, wow, this is a lot more fancy than it was last year. And I said, you sure this thing isn't on a timer? When you guys turn on the light, you're turning on a timer and it's just turning itself off? They're like, no. So I wanted to talk to the chaperone to let her know what one of the girls said, because I didn't want her to be like in for a rude awakening and come to find out that this girl was like, oh my gosh, this place is freaky. And so what happens is hello. Okay. So what ends up happening is I pull the chaperone out, close the door, and says, okay, so this is what happened earlier. Let me express what happened from one of these girls when she first arrived. Anyway, as I'm telling their story, you're screaming, again. I open the door, the lights are off. All the girls are like piled up on the top bunk, and I'm looking at them, and I says, who's turning off the light? And he says, not us. So I turn the light back on. I said, knock it off. So I close the door so that I can continue talking to the chaperone. And I start saying it again, and again, the girls start screaming. I open the door, and the lights are off. I'm like, what the heck? So anyway, it was nothing paranormal. It was just that the cabin, because I found out the other cabin they were also freaking out because their lights kept turning on and off too. Come to find out that when one cabin turned their lights on, the other cabin's lights would go off. When that cabin would turn their lights back on, the other cabin would turn off. So it's like the light switches were connecting to each other, which is really weird, right? So that solved that. But I mean, other than that, I mean, nothing really happened the first night. There was no knocking. There was no kids waking up in the middle of the night, sleepwalking, nothing. It was all pretty tame, actually, until the next day. Kind of learn what happened. So we go on top of this hiking trip. Right? We're taking a hike up into the mountains toward this thing called Crystal Cave. And on our way there, we took a small break halfway up, and the gal that took us on the tour started telling us stories, telling us legends and stuff like that. And the kids love that stuff, right? So they're eating it up. And as she's, telling her stories, the kids are looking at me because they want to say something, because this is the same kind of stuff that I talk to them about, like superstitions and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, that's the same stuff. I said, nope, don't.
Ew.
What's up?
Oh, are you filming video?
I'm filming.
You just watch?
No.
Dang.
Sorry, guys.
I'll be watching it at home.
You got it. See you guys. Close my door.
I hope so. Something scary happens.
I hope so too. Bye. These kids. It's recess. So, what was I saying? We went on top of that hiking trip. That's what it was. Okay. So we went on that hiking trip. We get halfway up the mountain, and the gal starts telling us legends and whatnot about what's going on in the area. And what happens is, she tells us about how, as they're, taking care of certain areas of the camp, they're like, oh yeah, so we want to make sure that these things are up, there's upkeep, right? Anyway, I guess they did some digging around the campsite, Camp Erdman, and they actually found the remains of ancient Hawaiian bones. So it was like, oh my gosh, I had this feeling just a few years back. This place feels like a cemetery. And sure enough, they have found and discovered bones in the area of the camp. Now, they sent it over to the historical peoples, what do they call them? Well, anyway, those science people, paleontologists, I don't know what they're called. They sent them over to them and found out, yep, these remains are ancient, so they actually have to go back into the ground, and that's where they need to stay. Now, this is what explains why. This explains away why we weren't experiencing anything and how come it was so different, this camping trip, compared to the others. And it was because when she said they returned the bones, they had a kahu, or a priest, as they're called, kahu, come in and bless the area. So the place was consecrated, right? They did a blessing on top of the grounds, therefore all of the things that were happening stopped. And that explained why there was no paranormal activity and no real feelings in those areas that we had experienced those things before. That night when we went to bed, the second night, I decided to tell my actual camp stories of the camp, and kids enjoyed it. They got spooked, they got freaked. I did the jump scare and everything, and they had a great time. And we all went into our cabins, went to sleep, woke up the next morning, had breakfast, and came back home with absolutely nothing. So the entire trip was very smooth. So kudos to the guys running Camp Erdman. I mean, you guys are really keeping the place nice. You're keeping the place safe. You're making more things for families and the kids to enjoy. So that's fantastic. And you guys are also doing it in a respectful way where you're taking care of the area, bringing in their appropriate people to do the protocols to keep the kids safe from whatever. I mean, like, it's nice to have spooky things happen during camp, though, It kind of is. I mean, it wasn't like it was super intrusive, and like maybe you lose a couple of hours sleep because you're like freaking out, over the fact that someone's knocking on your door, or someone's staring at you from the top of a building. But it's not like it was anything like too insane, like kids getting like manhandled or anything like that. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like I was saying, I got burnt. I don't have any, like, besides the darker skin tone, I don't have any like sunburn or anything like that to show for the fact that I was in the sun for the 72 hours. But yeah, I love being at these places, camp, carnival, circus, anywhere you can think of where kids are having a great time. I love being in places like that. That's truly where I feel the most happy, is when people are enjoying themselves, where they can actually find entertainment and joy. Movie theaters and stuff like that are awesome. But yeah, it's such a treat. It's such a blessing and such a honor. Such an honor to be asked to come as a chaperone to these things. And this is something that I'm going to be missing, no longer being here at the school anymore. I'm really going to be, this is one of the aspects of my job that I actually really enjoyed and I'm really going to miss. So, yeah. As fun as it is, I have to think about, next steps. I got to take care of me, I got to take care of mine, and I can't do that in a place who is not really providing me the value for what I do, because during the pandemic I was told that what I provided for the students had no value. Yeah. What is that, 2019, 2020, whatever it was, 2019. I was fired from receiving payment from one of my sources during that time. And it was sad for me. It hurt to hear somebody say that I had no value. But this person didn't know who I was. This person didn't know me personally. So I didn't really dwell on it for very long. It's just the idea that I had done so much for the school and all of a sudden this one person just comes out and says, blanket statement, you do not provide our children value. I wasn't providing her kid value because her kid was, taking art the wrong way, didn't understand what to do. And of course, if the parents aren't going to be there to help their kid understand what it is that the teacher's asking them to do, then it's not the teacher's fault, right? Teacher can only do so much from remote learning. Parent has to be there to help them pause the machine, right? Work the controls on top of their devices, whatever they're using to watch it. But I was providing art all through the pandemic, and it makes me sick to think that somebody can just decide we're no longer going to pay this guy because he's not providing value for our children in the arts. And so that sucked. My contract ended with them, and it was just the school taking care of me at that moment, and I was just like bummed, but that's okay. It's okay. It pushed me to this point, right? Now I feel I am not given the value that I deserve for what I produce at this school, and the school has gotten less through me. I'm not bending over backwards anymore to accommodate what these people need, because I'm not getting paid for it. And nobody really knows this story because there was a deal made between me and the principal that was here at the time. And like I said, we have a new principal who also came on top of the Camp Erdman trip, which he also came to the Big Island trip the week before. So I was like, but the Camp Erdman trip was a lot more smooth sailing than it was for the Big Island. The Big Island trip must have been like hecka crazy. But anyway, I'm getting off track. So Camp Erdman, all this time, haunted. All this time, a cemetery. All this time, full of ghosts. All this time, full of stories. All these stories that you hear from people about the camp, true. But now that the people that work at the camp know that there are people still buried, the ancients still buried up in that area, there's a lot more respect that goes into them being there, which means that giving them the recognition that they deserve, showing them that they are valued, cause them to be at peace. Pretty cool, right? So now I'm looking to find something that fills me to honor the value that I have for myself, right? I'm going to honor myself by looking for something that provides me with the value I believe I deserve, which is cool. Scary, but it's cool, right? So we shall see where these next few months take us, but like I said, I've only got a couple more weeks at this place, and you're going to notice that my background is going to change if I continue to do these Mo'olelo Mondays, but yeah, we'll get more stories out of it, and maybe we'll talk about other places on the island too as we move from place to place, or I talk about other things. We never know. I never really know. I was supposed to write down a list of all these things that I was going to talk about on my Mo'olelo Mondays and stuff like that, but my kiddos over there, just school's over, so they're trying to make all this noise. But yeah, anyway, what was I saying? They distracted me. I should just keep this in the video so when they watch them they can be like, oh yeah, it's the time we ran past the windows and banged on the windows. Yeah, we'll see where this takes us. If I do continue doing the Mo'olelo Mondays, I've been enjoying them. I've been having a lot of fun talking about experiences and, of course, my life with you folks. I mean, if it's something that you guys are enjoying, then I'll keep making it. I mean, you guys have any concerns or anything that you guys want to say, you can always post them in the comment section. I read them and comment back. Of course, if you're going to be like inappropriate, or if you're going to say things that are negative, then I'm probably not going to respond to you, or I'm just going to ignore you, or I'll leave your comments though, because I'm not the type of person who enjoys censorship, right? You have something that you want to say, you should say it. Now, whether or not it's positive or nice, I mean, that's all up to the person, right? What are you gonna say? You're gonna say something that's helpful, critiquing, or you're gonna be like just, oh, you suck or whatever like that, yeah. So anyway, if you do have anything that you'd like to share with me, please leave it in the comments. And other than that, I guess that is the end of our Mo'olelo Monday Camp Erdman. Fun, a lot of fun. If you guys have kids that are in public school and their school goes and takes the sixth graders to Camp Erdman or whatever grade that goes to Camp Erdman, then I highly recommend it. To ask the teachers, is like, hey, can we do the Camp Erdman thing? Because it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and then of course having that opportunity to spend time with your friends at camp, priceless, man. Some of the best memories I had was hanging out with my friends at camp. So totally different spending the night with your friends that you normally only see during the day, right? And everybody, right? It's a shock to see the girls all day, all night. It's a shock to, for the girls, I'm sure it's a shock to see the boys all day, all night. So it's a good experience. Builds confidence, especially with all the different types of things they have there now, like the Alpine Tower and archery and stuff like that. Teaches skills that are different, yeah, fun skills that you can be proud of. I mean, you can see instant results too, archery. I think it's awesome. I love archery. Never got to do that when I was younger, but fortunately, now that I'm a chaperone, I was able to participate in archery, and that's good fun. I enjoy that. I could do that every day. But anyway, just want to say thank you, folks, for watching. Crazy people keep walking by, keep catching my attention. Yeah. So we will see you all on the next Mo'olelo Monday, whenever that may be. And I'll figure something. Well, yeah, that's right. I was telling you guys earlier, I was supposed to write a list of all these things that I was going to talk about. Never got around to it. I'm just been so busy working on this stuff and trying to find time to actually record my Mo'olelo Mondays. Today was really cool. Today was a career day. So parents came in of all the kids. Well, certain kids, they came in to talk about their careers. We had a casting director. We had firemen, policemen. We had people who take care of utilities, like all kinds of insane people. This is amazing. In my class, I was actually home to the tattoo artist who came to our school to share her talent. And if you guys want to check out more of her work, like, she gave me a gift. She gave me a gift. I should have gave her a gift, but I don't get paid to pass out gifts to people, especially when it's not something that I organized. I'm just helping. But yeah, www.theoceansend.com, Oceans End Hawaii. You can find some of her designs, right? So this little crossbody bag, she gave it to me as a gift for her coming. That's crazy, right? She gave me a gift so that she could come and teach my kids. This was like a free day for me, you know what I mean? I just sit back, relax, watch her teach my kids, right? So cool. This is so awesome. So thank you, Danny. I really do appreciate this. Even though these are not really the type of things I wear, this is going to go to a good cause because I know my wife is going to love it. So thank you very much. I do appreciate you being here, sharing with the kids, your talent, sharing them your profession, and showing them how passionate you are. Because I think that's one of the things, right? Our passions. That's what we should be spending most of our time with, is what we're passionate with, rather than trying to just get a job that makes a lot of money. Do what makes you happy. Do what gives you love, what you find joy in, right? That's the point. So anyway, it's getting late. I flapped my gums long enough. I just wanted to say thank you guys for stopping by. Love you all. And we will see you on the next Mo'olelo Monday. Ahui ho. Malama pono.